welcome to The Torch. I'm Pat,
I'm Kevin.
and today we're going to talk again about the truth of America's founding, your heritage and mine.
Whose heritage, Miss Pat? Sorry.
All of ours.
I didn't mean to interrupt you like she was just going to take right on off. Their heritage, your heritage?
Their heritage and mine, your heritage and mine.
Being an American has some heritages attached to it?
Yeah. The truth of America's founding, your heritage and mine.
Yes, I think a lot of people don't realize that they have an American heritage as a citizen of this great country.
Probably not, or maybe they don't really. Maybe they realize that, but they maybe do not realize what that entails.
And that's why we're probably doing this class, I would imagine.
Probably has something to do with it.
Yeah, so I'm excited about today. And so, where are we going today?
Today we're going to talk about Articles 3 and the First Amendment. Well, I don't want to jump that far ahead.
Maybe not quite yet. I need to get there, but yes.
So, Article 3 is on the judicial branch.
So that's probably real good timing for the environment that we're living in, since it seems like a lot of things are heading to
the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court, and I think probably maybe stretched a little further than what the founders intended. Maybe.
Well, let's start out by covering some information here that's been covered before.
Mm-hmm.
But does the judicial branch have the power to legislate law?
Does the judicial branch, which is the court system, for those that may not exactly know that, have the power to legislate? Because of the job you did last week, I would say that they do not have legislative power.
That's right. Who does?
The president.
No.
I think no, the president does not legislate. Yes, you'll be able to tell them the answer, I'm sure.
Well, if you think about legislate and legislative.
Legislators, yes. I'm seeing how we can connect those together.
Which is Congress.
Yes.
So we're talking about the Senate and the House of Representatives.
Mm-hmm.
They are the only ones who make law.
Supposed to, right?
Supposed to. If you remember, I said the first thing in the Constitution that talks about that is the one little three-letter word, all.
All. And that was in Article
1, Section 1.
That's right up front.
Right up front.
It's not like 15th on the list, or, we talk about this and talk about that. It was like right like this is the agreement with the people.
Just after the preamble.
So, all legislative duties are for the legislators.
Are vested in the legislators.
And so, here we are, and we talked about the president.
Yes.
The presidency and the duties and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're at the third branch of government, which is the court system for them, the judicial branch.
Right.
And so they're not supposed to make law.
What they are doing is it's like any court of law.
Mm-hmm.
They're making decisions for the people involved in the case.
Mm-hmm.
Roe versus Wade is a prime example. There are quite a few others.
Yeah.
But Roe versus Wade, the decision that they made affected only those two people. It didn't affect you, me, and them, and
for the last 50 years, everybody in between, and all the little bitties that decision and opinion affected.
Mm-hmm.
So part of this class is to teach the proper intent of the Constitution, which the government is supposed to follow.
Right.
And so, what are the kind of the intent of the founders when it comes to the judicial branch?
Okay. First of all, the power granted to the judicial branch is in Article 3, Section 2.
Mm-hmm.
And it says the judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under the Constitution. It says all cases. Cases being two entities opposing each other.
Not just a blanket thing across the land and like we're just going to make this ruling for everybody in the country.
Right.
That's not the intent.
That's not the intent. That's not what it says. The judicial branch does not have the power to legislate, period. And then it talks about Roe versus Wade. In addition, our founders took that a step farther. Number one is pretended legislation, because it's taking an innocent life and therefore does not comply with the laws of nature and nature's God. The Ten Commandments and other revealed laws and your own conscience.
So the ruling that was supposed to be between those two parties, when they ruled that in the Constitution you have a constitutional right to, and it was put out there like it was the law now of the land that you could just abort these babies, that was pretended legislation because it actually goes against the laws of nature and nature's God. We are not supposed to, there's no legislative branch or judicial branch or executive branch that has the authority to supersede their will over the will of God.
Mm-hmm. That's the point it's supposed to be. There's two other examples of illegitimate Supreme Court rulings, and they just faded away because public opinion was strong against them. One is Dred Scott, 1857. Supreme Court Justice Taney ruled that slaves were property and therefore could not become citizens. That's not right.
Nope.
The other one was Buck versus Bell, 1927. Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes ruled that imbecilic, mentally impaired women should be sterilized.
So those two particular rulings would have gone against the laws of nature and nature's God, I would think, by doing medical procedures on these women, but also for any slavery in the United States and stuff like that. That would be kind of going against the intent of the...
We discussed that last week.
Yeah.
Frederick Douglass. About what was it, 3/5 of a person?
Yep.
They were not 3/5 of a person at all, which, of course, makes sense.
Right, of course. So they need to go back and watch the other episodes too, because you're painting a picture from the introduction, lesson 1 or episode 1, lesson 2, episode 2, and of course this one we're just kind of going right down the Constitution and taking these bite-sized portions to help bring them up on speed of what it says, because the more people that know what it actually says, the more we can elect people that will actually do what it says and things that restore the Constitution as intended. That's called reviving what was intended, not overthrow. So let's scratch it. I might actually edit that part out just to make sure it doesn't click some algorithm somewhere.
So each judge in the Supreme Court is nominated by a president, and that has to be filtered down through the Senate, be approved by the Senate. Some people say that it is that they are nominated for life, that they're there for life. Is that true?
Well, that's what they say, but I don't remember reading that ever. Kind of like the president's not elected for life, the legislator's not elected for life, so why would the Supreme Court members be elected for life or nominated? Where does it say that?
Contrary to popular belief, judicial appointments are not for life, but for good behavior. That's in Section 3 Article 3, Section 1. So, okay, what happens if they misbehave, and what is considered misbehaving?
What is the definite? What is misbehaving of a judge, and then what happens to them if they misbehave? Because they're not all powerful.
No, according to the Constitution, they, among any other civil or federal person, is subject to impeachment for reasons of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors.
How can a judge be like impeached for treason? What would they be doing that would be like a treasonistic decision or judgment? I mean, that's a good question.
That's a good question.
They're part of the government, so could they actually be held in contempt of the Constitution, or really, if they're maybe making ruling that are against it?
I suppose, and I read further on this too. It's an open decision here about treason, bribery, high crimes, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. Well, that could encompass everything from drunk driving to murder.
So, wow, people don't realize that even the justices, probably of any court system in the land, should be held accountable too for the way they're ruling. They should be ruling. What if a judge says that it's the right of all these illegal aliens to be in this country, even if they didn't go through the proper vetting of our immigration policies that the legislator voted and they put into law? That's now the law of the land because the legislators have legislated that. What if a court says that no, we're going to let them all stay, and they're not here, they didn't come the legal way, and they're just like, 8 million of y'all are now citizens. Would that be like a treasonous thing?
Well, to me it would be, and as I recall, don't quote me on this, but I do think that I remember saying that the Senate has the power to start the impeachment process. Not the Senate, or maybe the House, I can't remember which one it is, has the power to start the impeachment process for any number of reasons beyond this. This applies not only to the judicial system, to the Supreme Court, but it also applies to the president, the vice president, the Senate, and stuff like that.
All the federal.
I think it even goes down to the civil level. So I'll check on that and make sure.
Interesting. I mean, it's a good thought. It's like, why, if they made a ruling that says all of you can stay, and we know it's an invasion, and it goes completely against all these people because you're breaking the own laws of the United States of America.
Well, one of the duties of the president, as I recall, is to protect the citizens of this nation. And you're allowing this influx of illegal aliens to come in. That's not protection.
No, and did you see the line of those people? They're anywhere from 19, 30-year-olds, most of them, and they don't look like they're from, a lot of them, the pictures I've seen, look like they're anything but from like South America. They're like, from all over the place, and they look like, almost, from the stuff I've seen, don't look like women and children, looking for just a better life or food, And I understand if you're starving to death, you do whatever you want, but not what's going, So,
not what's going on.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to get you off, and don't want to get off too far, but that's people need to know that there's remedies for rogue.
There are remedies for it, and
rogue.
of course we're going to cover some of that. What we, the people, can do in the next lesson.
Good. Okay. Perfect.
Okay. The Constitution let me rephrase that. Are the branches of the government co-equal? The three branches of the government, legislative, executive, and judicial, are they co-equal?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I haven't got them really right all this time, but I think I got that one right. But I haven't even answered it. I guess you can be the judge of that since we're talking about that. I think if you read the Constitution, most of everything that's written in the Constitution really is targeted the legislative branch, and then you take the president's office and it's a little bit smaller, and then you take the judicial area and it's actually kind of tiny, very cut and dry, shouldn't be any kind of way you can misconstrue that, but I would think the judicial branch would be the least most powerful branch.
You're right. Hey,
Hey, yay! Somebody out there give us a thumbs up, or at least me,
Give me a gold star.
Give me a gold star, a little heart or something.
The founders never really thought about three co-equal branches. It doesn't even appear in the Constitution. And you just said it. The legislative branch has the most power. And are most accountable to the people. The executive branch has less authority than the legislative, and then the judicial branch has the least amount of authority. In the Federalist Papers, Federalist Paper 51, James Madison says, "It's not possible to give each department an equal power. In a Republican government, the legislative authority necessarily predominates." And if you want to read further on that, Federalist Paper number 78 also supports it. And you can find that online at guides.loc.gov, which is the Library of Congress.
Oh, so they can pick up the stuff that's actually in the Library of Congress, that has information that explains some of these things.
But you can just go in there and see the whole thing, and if somebody who's really a history buff or something, and it's a good place to go for your research when you're trying to change somebody's opinion of something.
So by doing these classes, we're trying to actually bring some truth in maybe the simplest form, let the people hear it, and if they want to go research it, to dive in to see what you're sharing is truth, which is truth. They can, and if they want to dig deeper, they can dig deeper. But we're trying to help people to wake up and allow so their republic doesn't slip away.
Yeah, and allow them to not depend on somebody else's opinion, but go and research it and form their own opinions. Okay, let's move on to the Bill of Rights.
Yes.
Which are amendments 1 through 10. They were added in 1791, 4 years after the Constitution was ratified. The first 10 amendments limited the power of the federal government. Amendments 11 through 27 were added in 1795 to 1992, and they expanded the powers of the government.
So is it just like human nature? If they're boxed in to want to push past their boundaries, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, keeping up with the Joneses, all these kind of things. And there's not anybody that's probably not guilty of trying to occupy a little bit more, but neither is the government. I mean, the government is
going a bit overboard.
Yeah, way more than what even the expanded version, I would imagine.
Yeah, so we're going to concentrate on the First Amendment for right now.
Okay.
There are 5 freedoms in the First Amendment. Do you know what they are?
I can take a crack at them.
Go for it.
Okay. So the First Amendment is the right to bear arms, to have a militia, to, I think those two. That would be the Second Amendment. So First Amendment would be, so the first one probably would be the most important, not the most important, but it is number one in the order of the 10, the original. So religion, right to, to worship, to speak, free speech, okay, right of the press, and peaceful assembly.
One more.
And let me look at my notes.
It's the one I always forget to.
Oh yes, the petition of grievances.
Redress of grievances.
Yeah, nobody ever thinks that that's part of number one.
Yeah, that's part of number one. And but today we're going to kind of focus on religion.
Okay.
And the first phrase of the First Amendment is, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. It's usually called the Establishment Clause.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the original intent of the founders, there was not a specific church denomination established by the government as the national church. By the way, Christianity is not a denomination.
No, it's not a denomination.
So, like, where our founders were trying to protect the nation against having a national church like England does.
Right.
And it addressed to Congress, which is the only group that can violate it. Schools can't, teachers can't, and local governments can't. None of them can violate that law. But you know what? Congress can. I'm going to read this to you. Even Congress can only violate the First Amendment by passing a law establishing a denomination as the national church, or by passing a law prohibiting the free exercise of biblically based religion of individuals or various denominations. But, in my mind, that should be pretended legislation. Mainly because it goes against the laws of nature, and nature is God. There's a video out, which is too long to show in our time frame, but it's by David Barton, and he discusses the history of the church and state on a video called The Church State and the Real First Amendment. In 1802, Thomas Jefferson assured the Danbury Baptist that there was a wall of separation between church and state, which would keep the state out of the church, not the other way around. There is no separation of church and state as far as the government is concerned. The government stays out of the church.
So let me get this straight. So we've seen that video. The David Barton is really good. So they can go. It's on YouTube, I think.
I'm sure it is.
Just type in David Barton and separation of
Yeah.
church and state. So anything by David Barton is really good, and he's got the biggest collection. We already said his biggest archive and collection of the original intent documents of anybody probably in the world. And so it's not what somebody else said they said, it's what they said, and what they said they thought about things. And so the separation between church and state, it's the other way around. The government stays out of the business of the church, right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean the people can't take the church into the government.
Right. So how did we get to where we are?
Probably pretended legislation by a court.
No.
Oh.
Well.
I mean.
Yeah.
Yes.
Technically, yes.
Okay.
Here we go with Supreme Court again.
Okay.
1947. Supreme Court Everson versus the Board of Education.
Yes.
took Jefferson's 1802 letter completely out of context, ignored original intent,
Yes.
and ruled that the term separation of church and state meant that a person could no longer have free exercise of religion in public places. Take it a step farther in 1962. Here's where it really started going downhill. The court used the revised definition of separation of church and state to take prayer out of public schools. 1963, using the same misinterpretation, the court banned Bible reading in public schools. Okay, think back to last week, 1782. Congress published a Bible for use in the schools.
Right.
Now, how does that allow this to be believed?
It can't be believed. And so the Congress probably had the duty to impeach these justices that were trying to do this, because it goes against the law of nature, nature's laws, because the Lord God, I mean, it's pretty, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That means it's a part of everything you do. So he's telling us that you will love him. That's the first, it's the love you, Lord God. And so he's number one and just in everything. So if you're trying to take him out of things now, that would be kind of against the laws of nature. It's kind of a dumb thing too, because there's no blessing when you take him out of stuff. When you kick him out, have you heard this saying, when all these natural disasters and things have come and hit these certain areas where they've just absolutely opposed him, and then they cry out, well, where was God in the middle of all this stuff? Exactly where you put him out of your life.
Exactly.
So you're going to go a little bit further with this, I'm sure.
Yeah, let me regroup here.
Sorry, I get off on these little rabbit trails here, and
I should be used to your rabbit trails.
take Miss Pat down a place, and it's like her wheels are starting to think. It's like, oh yeah,
Anyway, it goes back to the original intent, which, this video of David Barton's is, and again, the name of that video is Church, State, and the Real First Amendment. And I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. I didn't check that part.
Right, that's okay.
But everything points to the fact that these people are taking the Constitution and turning it into what is convenient for them to have more power.
Yep.
And
right.
So what's happening is we're changing from America's original Bible absolutes to evolutionary humanistic relativism.
You got to say that 6 times. Ready?
Forget it.
So evolutionary, humanistic, relativism. What is that? Do you have a definition of what that actually is? Or what
let's just start from the beginning here, where it all started. Original intent of our constitutional republic began to crumble during the mid-1800s.
Can you believe it's that far back?
And you know where it started? There was a book written, Origin of the Species by Charles Darwin. Now, we talked a little bit about this last week, and we were talking about the theory of evolution.
Yeah.
And we found from Mr. Webster's Helpful Dictionary that theory is not a proven fact. To put it simply.
Theory.
It's a theory, and it's not proven. It's somebody's opinion.
Theory is somebody's opinion.
Now, that's the simplest way to put it.
Yeah. So 10,000 years worth of human history, this guy, Charles Darwin, decided, I know more than the...
Yeah. Now, to back him up, a British philosopher and sociologist, Herbert Spencer, made Darwin's model of philosophy a worldview. In 1870, Christopher Langdale, dean of Harvard Law School, pioneered a new theory of law known as legal positivism. All these words with visms in them.
Isms, yep, right.
There were 4 principles included in that. There is no divine absolutes in law. Law is simply man-made. Law evolves as man evolves. Judges guide this evolution of law by writing decisions. Now, to me, the operative word there is decisions.
Yep.
It's not law, it's a decision. That doesn't make it a law.
I know that, you know that, but some of the government officials don't seem to understand that. Or they choose not to understand
We
that.
all have choices.
Yeah.
Legal positivism birthed the idea of a living, evolving constitution.
Ah, so there it comes right there. There it is. So can we go back so it started from a guy who hated God, didn't want to have anything to do with him, didn't want to submit to him, didn't want to yield to having to be accountable, and that's really what it is. Atheists, they don't want to be accountable for their actions and the way they live, so they ignore God, try to throw him out, and then they start trying to persuade.
And that's okay.
Devil has
They have a right to choose that.
They can choose it, but that's not. We don't have to listen to it because it's their opinion.
We have a right to choose also.
Yes. Yes. No, yes. Oh, I absolutely agree. But it goes back to somebody who just think about what's it going to be like when Jesus is, even in the millennial reign and beyond. There's not going to be an opinion whether he is boss or not at that time. Right?
Right.
He is, and that's it. So they have a right to their opinion, and they can have it.
They can have it.
But they don't have a right to change society for everybody else to meet their opinion.
That's right. And
makes me get all fired up.
Legal positivism also brought forth the progressive movement in America. Now that's kind of where we are at this point. However, progressivism, well, I made myself a note here that says, what is progressivism? And I'm going to read you this statement. This was written back in 2009.
2009? Okay.
By R.J. Pestrito.
Pestrito?
I probably mutilated that. I'm sorry.
Italian, maybe?
Could be. He was Shipley Professor of the American Constitution at Hillsdale College.
Oh, okay.
And we're talking about progressivism. Many on the left today call themselves progressive. And they do so not just because it's a nicer way of saying liberal, but also because they very much intend to revive or revamp the political principles of America's original progressives from the progressive era of the 1880s through World War I. So progressivism goes back to the 1880s, and it gave the government more power. I'm going to read you something else here. You might get a little bit disturbed by it. Progressivism was furthered by John Dewey, atheist, father of modern public education and co-author of the Humanist Manifesto. He wrote, "There is no God and there is no soul. Hence there is no need for the props of traditional religion. With dogma and creed excluded, many immutable truth is excluded. Then immutable truth is dead and buried. There is no room for fixed and natural law or permanent moral absolutes."
And he was the father of the modern school system. The modern public education system was a guy who absolutely hated God, evidently. I mean, really, that's what it boils down to. And he hates him so much, and he actually hated other people because, we understand that the penalty for sin is death. And so if you're going to throw God out of everything, sin run rampant then. There's no accountability. There's no boundaries to whatever people want to do. And in sin, we understand as a ministry, sin never is just this one thing. It always tries to get a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And when it gets full blown like that, it never wants to sit with you alone. Not you, but the person alone. It always wants to then start including others.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy actually hated probably people, kids, because it's a school system, young people, enough to where they want to doom their souls to eternal punishment.
Well, children are very malleable. I mean, you can... Children are like sponges.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to hear these things and they're going to remember them. You've got a daughter that is a prime example.
Yeah. She
doesn't forget very much.
No. No.
Sometimes you probably wish she did, but that's true of kids. They absorb everything, and naturally, this sounds great, so we're going to do it this way.
Yeah.
The old idea that, well, if you're a Christian, then you don't have any fun.
Right. Which we're having a greater life now than we ever did before, really serving the Lord. So this guy, if you kind of keep on going back, it goes back into power again, whose ways are going to be the public ways, and if you really trace it back to the Garden of Eden, who is in charge? Who has got the authority? Who is going to be the one everybody else follows? Well, the enemy, absolutely, I will ascend my throne like the Most High. I will do this. I will, basically, that's where all this really has its roots, is in the demonic, actually. So that's where that, spirituality and civil life comes in, because we do have an enemy that is at work behind us, and God has given us the ability to have some choices here under the government of God. Ultimately the government of God is what stands. So sorry, I didn't want to. That might be. Is that your phone?
Probably.
Okay. So sorry, I didn't mean to take you out, and we still got lots of time here. So going from him to talking about the progressives, and where are we going back to?
Actually, this carries us into about 1932, 33.
Still a pretty good while back.
Yeah, still a pretty good while back, but more familiar to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
The name Franklin Delano Roosevelt will ring true for most of them. Mm-hmm. He started the New Deal.
The New Deal.
This was during the Depression,
mm-hmm.
and he started different government programs. And they were good on the surface because people were suffering. Mm-hmm. My parents, I was a little bitty, but I still remember my parents lived on a farm, and Dad was still farming, but they weren't making ends meet. Mm-hmm. And what happened was the New Deal was projects to help people be employed. One was called the CCC, which was the
CCC, not CCP, like the Chinese Communist Party?
No, CCC.
CCC.
Which was the Civilian Conservation Corps.
Communist Corps.
No.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I keep trying to add communism in it.
Yeah. No, we're not there yet.
You're not there yet.
Civilian Conservation Corps,
mm-hmm.
which was mainly, I think, aimed at the younger men.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like the Forestry Service.
Yeah.
Where they went out and they worked for in environmental type projects.
Like the park. You go right here in our area.
The park, planting trees,
Yeah.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that. The other one was the WPA.
WPA. I don't think I've heard of that one.
You haven't?
I don't think so.
Work Progress Administration.
Oh, what did they do?
It put 8.5 million people to work.
So probably during the Depression, probably was useful.
It was useful at the time. Americans worked at building roads, hospitals, and stuff like that. My dad, as I remember, I couldn't have been very old, worked on the WPA.
It was more for a different group of people doing different things versus the CCC. Because I read up on it on the CCC with the camps and where they go and live and you know, and they made them send back money home.
Yeah.
When they got their checks and stuff.
And I'm not sure about the WPA. And but I do know that I do remember as a little bitty kid looking at how dirty my dad was when he came home. That's what I remember from it.
So he was farming and this then at that time. That's how bad it was.
That's how bad it was. You know, they were able to grow their own food and stuff like that. But and of course I don't remember how hard it really was or anything, but that was the way it was at the time. And this was, you know, the Depression. There was no money, we were in a war.
Right.
You know, so, but that's all part of progressivism. And, you know, it's up to us as to how we take all this stuff and what we can do about it, which is a question I have. Can we restore the Constitution to its original intent?
I would hope so.
And biblical principles of a limited government. Well, the answer is yes, but how do we do it? Well, you're doing part of it if you're watching this video. You're learning the Constitution and the principles within it, and your freedoms and your liberty and your responsibility. Because we're all responsible for our complacency that has allowed this to happen.
Maybe also, since we're a constitutional republic, there is a lot of weight on what we do with that vote and not just listening to what somebody says, but to actually look at their fruit, because their fruit's going to follow who they really are, not just what they say. Somebody can have a polished message, but then when you go dive down into what they've done or what they're doing or how they're voting and who they're giving their money to, which is part of public record, not like a politician. It's like who have they been giving money to? You know, it's not, if they're going to be in public office, it is our business now.
Yes.
If you're not in public office making decisions for everybody else, then you have some privacy. But if you're in public office, you don't have a right to that anymore.
And you might turn around and ask them if you get the opportunity. Have you ever read the Constitution? I mean, how can you take an oath on the Bible to uphold the Constitution if you've never read it? You don't know what you're upholding.
Which I think, if you know, being in the ministry part of this, the Lord still takes oaths as a big deal. You know that?
Yes.
So
I do.
It'd be better not to swear that oath at all and then break it than it would be to just want to take the position so bad and you have to do this. I wonder if they're ever going to the progressives ever going to try to get that. We're not going to take an oath to the Constitution anymore, you know.
Well, I'm waiting for that.
Yeah. So I'm going to let you finish, Miss Peck, 'cause I know that you've got lots of things to say still.
Well, we're getting down to the end now. There's a video which we don't have time to show this afternoon, but it's talking about Christians in politics. And it refers to several examples of men in the Bible who stood up in political matters. Moses stood up to Pharaoh. You can read Exodus chapters 5 through 13. John the Baptist confronted King Herod in Matthew 14.
Yeah.
The Apostle Paul speaks to the assembly, Acts 19. There were American pastors who took a political stand. Pastor Jonas Clark, Reverend Charles Finney, and here's a name that most of you will recognize, Dr. Martin Luther King, and there are others. Now, David Barton also exposes how the secularization of churches occurred today, and why many now believe they can't preach outside the church walls, and that they are so restricted in what they can say even inside those church walls. And that's not so. You are you are an American citizen, and it is your right and your responsibility to stand up for what is right, whether you're a minister, a layman, or whoever.
We can cut this part out.
For that matter, even if you're not a Christian, you still have a responsibility. You still have freedoms that you may want to fight for.
Well, a lot of the churches, and I can speak from not experience because I feel like we're so unique on this. And how can I say this without somebody getting all bent out of shape? I don't care. But a lot of pastors, especially the bigger the ministry and the more assets you have to pay for, they sometimes, and it is true, everybody knows it, especially that you don't want to ruffle the feathers of the givers, right?
Right.
Because they tend to leave and then they take their dollars with them. It is not supposed to be that way. You're not supposed to worry about that because the tithe goes to the Lord, and that's who you're responsible for, not the church. And if wherever you go, you naturally tithe to your church, and you give offerings, of course, and everybody knows that. That's sound biblical teaching. And that tithe is not supposed to be subject to whether or not you're happy with the pastor or not, or the ministry or not, because every single church out there, there's nobody that's going to like every single thing about wherever they are. They're just not. Some people like the music but don't like the preaching. Some people like the preaching but don't like the music. We've experienced that ourselves. They love everything about the church but they don't like the kids program. Or whatever the case, there's always going to be something that is not I wish it could be, or I wish it would be better here. And of course, I would say for those people, have you decided to maybe volunteer in that church and try to help serve in that area to make it a better place? Better thing. Pastor can't do everything. But the deal about this right here, as it relates to being able to preach and teach, unfortunately, a lot of the ministers don't want to say or don't want to confront because they don't want to offend, and thereby the dollars walk out of their church, which is wrong. It is not correct. We're supposed to say, because, I'll just use, the Lord supernaturally helps take care of us, and it's not supposed to look at the people as a check, if you will. We're not supposed to look at them like that. You're supposed to look at them as God's people. That God gives them commands. God gives us commands, and so we're all working together. But the pastorship, in a lot of this probably has been allowed to happen because those who influence society in the laws of nature and nature's God have not done their part to stand in the gap and say these things are wrong. The John the Baptist, the Moseses, the Pauls, and people like that can confront civil. The civil government is there here anyway, like you said from the very beginning, which is, it's there to provide for the security of the free people. Like the whole declaration or the preamble, that's like, why do we have a government? Is to secure those rights.
Yes.
And those rights are rights given by God, and so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take the floor like that, but I'm speaking to why, and I think I've said this before many times over the years. I think that there's if everybody if the churches across America would do minimal, you know, like we're doing something. We're doing something. We're trying to educate people. There would be a whole lot more educated, you know, people on these matters, and you can do. We're doing it tastefully.
I think we are.
So anyway, that's my take on it. Why that people are not speaking like they should in the pulpit because they're afraid maybe of their tax exempt status, or they don't want to ruffle the feathers and whatnot. So.
Yeah. Well, we have to remember a couple of things. It's not about Republicans and Democrats.
Right.
It's not about denominations or non-denominations.
Right.
It's about God.
Absolutely.
About Jesus. And that's where our freedoms come from.
Right.
And we're faced with some people who are power hungry and greedy who want to rule the world, and there's only one ruler.
Mm-hmm.
At least in my book. If people don't believe that, okay, I accept that. You know, that's okay. But I have as much right to believe as you have not to believe.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's the way this country was built, and that's why people always wanted to come to this country.
Because they could say what they want or believe what they want.
Yeah, they could believe what they wanted. And again, it goes back to choices. And I've chosen to do this, among other things.
Among many other things.
And people just really need to look inward.
Can I go to a Muslim nation and go around and just do whatever I want to do and believe whatever I want to believe in those theocracies like that are everything about that, or would I be jeopardized? Would I be in jeopardy of not being on this planet anymore? Because they don't put up with it.
No, they don't put up with it.
But here, we believe the gospel message holds power, and people can believe it or not. But that doesn't change the fact that the founding fathers built with a certain orientation, slant, understanding of who the master really is ultimately.
And progressivism is actually pushing that out and making the government more powerful, and you're going to end up not being able to own property. You're going to end up not having the freedom to go and come as you please. You're going to end up having your children owned by the government. How does that strike you?
Worker cattle, worker bees.
Worker bees or whatever, you know. They're going to teach them the way they want to teach them. And, you know, to me, that in itself is reason to stand up and look really deeply at what's going on and look within yourself as to how you want to do it. And as far as what you can do, you can write letters and all sorts of stuff to your congressmen and your senators and even to the president. Doubt that he ever sees them.
Or can read. I mean, excuse me. We might have to edit that part out too, so we have to do a lot of editing on this one.
And so what it amounts to. So what it amounts to is next week.
Yes.
I'm going to spend this week going into depth on how we the people can do something. We're going to talk about how you can write letters, and we're going to talk to you how you can maybe visit your state capital. We're going to talk about the form of those letters even. You know, you are a constituent to these senators and representatives, and that's the term you want to use in writing a letter. There's a formal way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Respectful.
Respectful. Always be respectful, and always know your material. Don't write an opinion. Write
facts.
Facts. Good. So that's basically what we're going to talk about next week.
Looking forward to it.
And that will be the last one of this. Oops.
And then they have an opportunity to sign up for a 12-week one. And we can come to their area,
Yes.
Well, we would like to come to, areas. If you're in Texas, it's a little easier to reach you, but, we're looking at all the technology to be able to do more of these kind of classes and stuff like that. So anyway.
Yeah, and that 12-week one is better done in person.
It is. It is so good.
Because
So good.
there's a lot more to it, and there's a lot of handouts that give you very complete information on a lot of different subjects. John Quincy Adams said, "Duty is ours, results are God's." So he says it quite plainly, duty is ours, and I think we've been remiss in doing our duty.
Yep.
And it's time we said, okay, this is enough.
Right. It's time to say this is enough on a whole lot of things and allow good people to run for office and to take the reins that will do what's right and stuff like that. And those, that might be picked to be public figures, they were leading the charge out there, can stop maybe and maybe start doing what's good and right.
I got a magazine in the mail the other day of an organization that I belong to, and they're kind of critiquing the people who are wanting to be president, and there's about 8 of them, and some of them I never heard of, which probably isn't unusual, but still, there's about 8 of them, and some of them, in my mind, I'm thinking, why? There's only maybe 2 or 3 that really might stand out, and even they have.
So, yeah.
So, but that's what I'm talking about. Finding out about these people before you go to the polls to vote. And the main thing, and not the main thing, but the thing you really need to do is get up off your couch and go vote. Do not vote by mail or anything like that. Here in Texas, or here in our county anyway, they've gone to paper ballots.
Oh, I saw that the last time we were voting. It's like, what's this? How did this get done? And it was like because one person and another person and another person and another person said that's enough. And they went and the legislator, or at least the county, maybe commissioners or whoever.
Yeah. I don't know about the rest of the state, but I do know here. It was paper ballots. And to me, I thought it was kind of neat.
Yeah.
It was easier than sitting there fighting with a computer.
Yeah, I liked it too. That's really good. Didn't Miss Pat look really nice? And look, she didn't even call me with the church, with the color on the shirt. We're almost like twins on that. So, did you notice that?
I hadn't noticed that, but yeah, we are.
So anyway, you did a good job. You always do. She always does a good job. Is doing a good job.
Thank you.
So, I hope that they'll come back and visit us again.
I hope so, and I hope somebody will consider the 12-week one, because it really gets in depth and really teaches you the Constitution. We go through the whole thing.
It's really, really good. Are we ready to pray? Or?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Well, let's pray and then we'll let him go. Well, Father, thank you so much again for allowing us to get together. Thank you again for the incredible, the incredible information. Your governance, God, is incredible, God, and that you have allowed man, in a lot of respects, to organize and to put forth, the system. But it's all still subject to you. Everything we do, whether it's civil government, church government, even home government, dear God, always has to come and be yielded to you and submitted to you, dear God. You are the one who is in charge, and that's it. And so, Lord, we're allowed to organize. We're allowed to make some decisions and stuff. Lord, help the people that are leading the charge in whether it's home, civil, or church government. Do the right thing before you, dear God, to yield to your wishes and your ways. Thank you so much again, Lord. We bless you and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
And amen. Well, until next time.
Until next time,
Bye. Thank you so much.
thank you.
The beauty of your plan that's been revealed when we walk in your light. We're walking it. Shine bright, let your glory fill this land. Lift high, the King of Kings and great I am, Jesus.